it's Jennifer from heysealemon. Thank you to all of you who are following me on my social links and following my art challenges, especially the most recent one, the April Daily Doodle Challenge. If you don't know what that is, you can check that out right here. It's really awesome to see how many doodles are coming through on a hashtag heysealemon. I searched that tag so I can find your doodles, and it's really cool. This is probably the biggest response I've ever had from any art challenge, so it's really cool to see that you guys are having fun with it. And along with the pictures that I've seen in the comments, I've seen some of you ask what kind of pens do I use or recommendations on pens. And I've seen some comments throughout my other videos asking more specifics on the paint that I like to use. So I thought I'd combine the two and make this a quick overview on the paints and pens that I like to use. Okay, so before I begin, if there's any paint or pen or a specific product that I'm showing and I don't mention what it is, be sure to go in the description below to see the link where you can find it and what the exact name of it is. And if you are not already, be sure to subscribe to my channel heysealemon for more art and DIY. And if you like these types of videos, give this a thumbs up and let me know more about what you want to see in the comments below. For the pen drawings that you see, I like to use a ballpoint pen. It's nothing fancy, but I really like drawing with it for some reason, and lately I've been really liking these Inkjoy pens because they draw really smooth. I really like drawing and painting with things that go on and glide smooth. I take to paint and like a really smooth pen better than like chalk or pencil. For some reason I just like really smooth mediums. For highlights on top of paint or ink projects, I've been using this Jelly Roll white pen. A white gel pen works well if you didn't leave room for making highlights on your art and you don't want to go erase something or go over it, or you can't. So if you just do a little white over it, it can really make a piece of art pop. For like markers, you may have noticed I have this big thing of permanent markers. A micron is always good when you need a really fine tip pen to doodle or draw with. Sharpies do have fine point pens, but they kind of bleed a little bit more on your paper than another drawing pen will. If you do want a permanent marker that doesn't bleed like that, Sharpie does make a pen. It doesn't bleed. I think it's equivalent to the other drawing pens. I think it just depends on your preference and the cost. Sometimes I will use a highlighter. I think they work just as well as really colorful markers, and they are really vibrant. They aren't opaque, obviously, but they can really add a splash of color to your artwork. I know a lot of you have suggested Copic markers. I haven't tried any of those. If you have any suggestions for beginning Copic markers, leave those in the comments below. Right now, my marker stash is kind of like overloaded already, so maybe down the line I will try some Copic markers. Alright, now on to some paint pens. I don't have it anymore because it dried out or I used it all up, but I used a white paint pen in a previous tutorial. It's a white acrylic paint pen. I really do like them because they are really opaque and your artwork below it isn't going to come through. So I really like to look for an opaque pen. I have this metallic one that has a ball in it, and that helps to break up the paint, which I think really helps in my experience. The past paint pen that I used didn't have one of those, and it really dried out and I couldn't get the paint back into the tip. So if you can find a pen that does have that, I think it helps. Not really any brand that I can say that I prefer over another in paint pens. You kind of have to just try some things and try them out and see what you like. I recently got this brush pen, which I used for some brush lettering. I'm still working with it. I'm really a beginner at brush lettering, and I really admire the people that can do brush calligraphy, beautiful stuff like that. I have terrible handwriting, so that kind of stuff doesn't come naturally to me. I think I'll just stick to my quirky, bulky letter style for now. These circular things back here is where I store my paint. A lot of people ask, what is that? And it's a cool wall thing, how can I make that? And you can check out that DIY video right here, along with other craft storage ideas. It's a kind of modular system, and I made it so that it would work with what I needed it for, and that's the great thing about DIY, is that you can make it work for your space. So I just put these 4 PVC pipe things on my wall, and they've been holding up really well so far, and the majority of my paint is all in here. I do have some acrylic paint tubes that are stored over there, but for the most part I always reach over here for all of my paint. My go-to paint are my oil paints over here. I color coded them on the bottom so I could better see what color I'm reaching for. These are water mixable oil colors. So these are a lot different than your traditional oil paints because you don't need any mineral spirits or chemicals to remove the paint from your brush or to dilute the paint. And because of that, I love these. I love that I can just fill up a cup of water and mix them and remove it from my brush. I just hate the smell of using chemicals on paint and brush. The mineral spirits and that stuff just like, ugh. So I just much would rather use water just like you do with acrylics or watercolor. So for that, I love these. I use oils for a lot of fine painting projects, or if I'm doing a lot of detail on something. I also use them with water, the water mixable oils, if I'm doing something that's like watercolor, but I don't really want to use watercolor. So sometimes I make them act like watercolor. And they don't dry out on you as much because they still have that oil base, and they're going to just stay in that paint mode a little longer if you have something to do, or if you still want to work on it in a few hours. It's not going to completely dry on you. Oil paints are probably not the best to use if you want your project to dry really fast, so just keep that in mind that you will have to factor in some time for your paint to dry, but I think it's worth it because it's great paint to use if you need something realistic, or you just want that blendability, you want to blend something really soft or make really vibrant colors. Oil paints are great for that. I do also have some watercolor paints, but since I force the water mixable oils to act as watercolor, I really don't use it that much, so I don't need other watercolors. So that's again why these oils are my go-to. The next one is gouache. I used a lot of gouache in design school. We had to use gouache. It's like a really thick watercolor. I really like it now because I'm used to working with it, but if you're like a first-time user of gouache, you might be like, why is it so expensive? And it can be really intimidating when you use it at first, but once you get a feel for it, it's basically like thick watercolor, and it really has a vibrant color. I still have some left from design school. Sometimes here and there I'll use it just to use it up. Gouache is also more expensive, I've noticed, especially when you're a design student. It can kind of break your bank. So just keep that in mind, you know, if you're like just on a whim, you want to buy some watercolor, maybe try some watercolor first and then step up to gouache. I still have a load of tempera paint, and I've only used it on a couple of projects, and that was scratch art. I haven't really found another use for it yet because of just the type of paint it is. It dries really flaky and really thin and crispy. It's kind of like really thin watercolor in my opinion. I haven't worked with it too much yet, but I'm still hanging on to it for the day when I might feel adventurous and need to make another tempera project. Next, here are my acrylic paints. I have a lot of metallics, I've noticed, so I seem to like the metallic acrylic paints. They have a really good consistency when you want to paint your projects. Rather than using spray metallic paint, I like a good metallic acrylic paint. Whenever I'm getting paint, I always look for the most non-toxic paint. I just like to be the safest I can be. I get paint on my hands and everywhere else, so I just want something that's not going to be poisonous, or you know, those labels. If I see that label that says like may cause cancer, I just put that paint right back, and I don't want that paint. So just when you're looking for paint, look for the most non-toxic that you can. Usually any paint products, markers that are in kids aisles are non-toxic because, you know, kids, you want them to be safe. That's usually a safe bet, but if you find yourself in a really specific section of paint and markers, just double check and make sure that it says non-toxic if you want to be safe. For acrylic paint, the advantage over oils is that it's going to dry faster and it can go on more projects possibly, but you might not be able to blend them as well. Acrylic will stick together and bond together kind of like latex. It's a very standard paint to use on any type of project. Now the fabric paint, which I have been kind of gaining a collection on. It's different than acrylic paint because if you're using it on fabric, it might ruin your washer or dryer. I'm not sure, I don't want to try it, but fabric paint is made for that. And it's really strong, but it acts like acrylic paint. So it can be flexible. It flexes with the fibers in your fabric. I think they come in different textures. This one is matte and soft. Sometimes if I am out of an acrylic paint, I will substitute the fabric paint instead. When you water it down, I've noticed there's these like metallic kind of particles that dry in the paint. I don't know if I'm explaining that right. It's also really strong. This paint has been the hardest to get off my fingers when I go and wash everything up. It really stays on your skin, so just keep that in mind that you might not want to finger paint with fabric paint. It is really hard to get off your brush too when it dries, so don't let your brush dry with fabric paint on it because it's really hard to get off. And I encourage you guys to kind of experiment with different mediums to find what you really like. Just because I like maybe oil paints doesn't mean that you have to go out and buy them. You can just kind of experiment and find something that you do like making art with, because it makes the whole process a lot more enjoyable once you find that thing or multiple things that you like making art with. If you have any other suggestions or experience with different paints, pens, markers, whatever you like to draw with, leave it in a comment below. I would love to read it, and I know others will benefit from it too, so leave that down there. Hit that like button if you have not already. Be sure to subscribe to my channel heysealemon for more DIY and art videos. If you want to jump into another video, you might like one of these right here. Links will be in the description below, and be sure to follow me on those social links along the bottom. I love seeing your artwork. As I said before, I will still be looking for those art challenge posts with a hashtag heysealemon. So keep on going and I will keep posting my stuff. I will see you guys next time.